Hello, YouTube. This is the Galley La Podcast, and today we have a theory video which will discuss basically the character of Akainu and what his role in the future is going to be. Is he going to just stay as your standard villain, or is he going to have more character progression to be more of an anti-hero? Because of the recent chapters, there's kind of been some potential room for development. So we will be spoiling you. We're going to be discussing up to One Piece chapter 1095, so spoiler warning there. If you have not read those. And then also, please like and subscribe if you have not. I'm Akainu Fanboy. The other guy is Geboss. And so the kind of, I guess we can leave. We can always see like Akainu is kind of like this hardcore villainous guy. He killed Ace. He believes in absolute justice. He's slayed Marines who've tried to escape. He was more aggressive with the Ohara incident by killing the civilians. So he has this strong sense of really powerful justice. Now, but I think there's kind of a way you could look at, I think there's two angles you could look at him that fleshes out his character more, where I think his sense, this is me personally, and I think there could be evidence against my position. I think there is evidence to show that he, how can I say, does not have the justice of the Gorosei, basically. Where his justice isn't synonymous with the Gorosei sense of justice. If the Gorosei even believe in justice, they just believe in control. I think with Sakazuki, he hates the idea of the corruption in the government because it gets in the way of killing pirates, basically. So we can kind of see this, for example, when he had his frustration with Bill Flamingo and CP0 fooling the idea with the warlord thing, and how he was kind of talking shit to the Gorosei about it, and the Gorosei were telling him to remember his place. So you kind of have that aspect of it right there too. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on kind of just that initial point? Do you think Sakazuki has the same sense of justice as the Gorosei?
So before I even answer that, you said that he would be more of a anti-hero. We were texting a little bit before this, and I like the term that you use better there, more of an anti-villain. Where I think he's still going to be a villain, but I think he's going to skew more towards Luffy's side eventually, to some extent. But but yeah, it's interesting that you bring up Akainu's whole sense of justice, in as much as that he has his sense, and it's very black and white. You're a pirate, you're bad. You work for the government, I don't know if you're good, but he can work with you. Like, there's no gray area there. Where we've seen other admirals kind of follow him, like Ryokugyu and kind of Kizaru to an extent. I think Kizaru just doesn't care. He just does whatever he's told. But on the other hand, we see the other side where Aokiji and Fujitora kind of go against the government's wishes to an extent. But yeah, I just think that his sense of justice is very black and white. But compared to the Gorosei, I don't know. They seem, like you said, to be a lot more about the control and everything. Which, I don't know. It's an interesting topic, but I don't think that he answers to them, but I don't know if he fully knows what's going on with them.
And we've seen him like kind of be disobedient to an extent to them too, or just like pissed off at them, just with the Doflamingo scenario, So if he saw like justice incarnate in them, he wouldn't behave that way to them. He'd just be like, yes, masters, you know, in a way, like, you know best. But he's like, no, like, I think like what matters most is I think what he thinks the Marines are synonymous more with justice itself, I think, because that whole argument of Fujitora was like, you're tarnishing the idea of the Marines and our reputation, basically, you know. So what the Gorosei did with that kind of fake news about Doflamingo resigning from the Warlords, that made him look bad, and it made the Navy look weak, basically. And kind of when that one Marine was deserting during the Marineford War, that makes the Marines look weak, basically, you know. And we don't know his backstory, but if I had to guess, I think the backstory, I'm just gonna make the shot that he was the victim of pirates in some horrific way, potentially, you know, and that he wants to create something strong to defend people, so that he doesn't have to feel that sense of helplessness ever again, in a way, you know. It's like kind of my fan, you know,
your head canon.
My head canon, you know, like that's kind of how I see it with him.
I mean,
because there have been moments where, oh, sorry, go.
I was gonna say the only hint that we really have of his childhood is the one image that we have that Oda drew of him. So he just looks rough, and he's already wielding a knife. But it's an interesting theory.
Yeah, because I think, so you say he's black and white, and I agree, but we've also seen moments, I don't know, I wouldn't say we would call him like a hypocrite, but where he's shown at least nuances or prudential decisions to kind of how he deals with his sense of justice. And I think in a similar way like Garp or Kuzan would, because he did spare Aokishi's life. Like, he didn't slay him, you know? He wanted him to come back into the Marines, you know? He eventually brought Fujitora back into the fold, even though he disobeyed him, you know? And he didn't bring Luffy a law, and that was his condition, right?
Yeah, but with Aokiji,
and I think
with Aokiji, it's there's that whole theory that they could potentially be working together because of like Akainu's whole tattoo with the sword thing. But I don't know, sword seems just so out of his how he prescribes to the Marines, I think. Like his overall view.
Yeah, we don't know. And I guess, like, if you see sword, we don't know what sword exists for, really, you know? Because there could be a common cause between Marines like Akainu and Marines like Kobe, where they just hate the government. You know, they just want to do their Marine duties, basically, you know, in a nutshell. You know, and I'd say kind of like the other compromise Akainu went through was like he was kind of hesitant on abolishing the warlords while Fuji was all the way for it. And I think it's a similar way. Garp has a clear moral code, but he knows he has to work within the system. And I think that's kind of the same way with Akainu as well, you know, because I think he wants victory no matter what. Like, his vision is black and white, but his practices can be a little mixed too, you know. Saw the warlords at the time as the best way to accomplish that, even though they're pirates, and ideally he'd want to kill them all, right? You know.
Yeah, I can't.
Given they're pirates.
I can't remember if he was for or against the abolition of them, of the warlords. I can't remember.
Yeah, maybe you could bring that up. But from what I kind of remember, it was something to the extent of he was kind of against it just because it would cause chaos, basically, you know, and they would lose a huge power asset.
Yeah,
and I think for like the oh, sorry, go.
I was gonna say he saw them as a necessary evil. So
yeah,
I guess he does to a certain extent can bend his view a little. Well, not his view, but he can work with them. Yeah.
And I feel like ideally he'd wish he could wipe them out altogether. And I think this is another contrast, I'd say, between the Gorosei and Akainu. I think Akainu's willing to disrupt balance if it means to kill pirates, while I think the Gorosei is not, in a way. You know, I think the Gorosei values stability, while Akainu values his goal more, you know, and sometimes those overlap and sometimes they diverge pretty quickly, you know. And I think it's really interesting, that cover story that's going to be in our thumbnail, where you see Akainu with a sword tattoo, but you see him growing a tree and he's trimming it. So even though he's kind of like this hothead and everything, I think it's a good symbol with how he works. He tries to look at things in the long term and everything, you know, because he has come a long way. He did climb the ranks. He did move the old Marineford base into past the red line, because he wanted to be more aggressive against the Yonkos and everything. So he does want to make a difference at the end of the day, while the Gorosei kind of want to keep the stability going. And I think it would be a great undercutting expectations if he was a part of SWORD, because that seems so contrary to his character. But I think he is kind of more of a long-term planner, in the long scheme of things, you know?
So,
like,
I don't know. In my eyes, I feel that he's done a lot of heinous things. Like, like you said earlier with the guy who was deserting the Marineford War, he just straight up killed him. He killed all the innocent civilians of Ohara. He killed Ace. But the Ace thing, it only really matters from our perspective because we do Ace. And to the whole world of One Piece, he needed to be killed. So Akainu looked like a hero there. But I don't know if that that justifies his actions. Like I said, he I don't think he compromises that part of himself.
Yeah, and I don't think he's like a hero or anything by any stretch of the imagination. I think with his sense of justice, he's very consequential. It's like a type of it where the end, all that matters. It doesn't matter what you do to get to the end, you know? While when you get to Kuzan and Fujitora, you know, they're kind of more moral all around in a way, you know? They care about what you do to get to that point of justice too. And I think with Akainu, with Ohara, it's like, okay, this is something that could destroy the world. I'm going to kill these people to prevent that. Yeah. You know? And then with this Marineford guy, the soldier is like, okay, you're going to undercut morale and we're just going to lose the war, you know? And so he executes him. And I think he's different than Green Bull, where Green Bull, I think he, from what we can see, I know it's been limited, but I think he believes in the government. He loves the hierarchy, right? I think he's kind of like a true believer. While I think Akainu doesn't per se, you know, just because how we see he treats the Gorosei and everything. And I think kind of when you get to this image too, when you got to that, was it 2 chapters ago in 1093 where the Celestial Dragons were talking all that shit to him? 92? Okay, yeah. 92. Where they're talking all this shit to him and like saying like, you're worthless, how are you like a fleet admiral and everything. While simultaneously, Akainu's calling Kuma a puppet, you know? And I think you could interpret it in one of two ways. He's kind of having a conversion process to understand where he stands in this, or 2, he's completely oblivious where he's just like kind of like take the log out of your own eye before you complain about the splinter in the other person's eye when you call somebody else a puppet. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good interpretation of that scene. But yeah, I do feel ultimately in the end, though, that Luffy is going to be pitted up against him in some way.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting in terms of like him being more of an anti-villain type of closer to Luffy's side. And I think one way we kind of establish that is because I think to an extent Oda has established that by saying if he was the protagonist, he would find the One Piece in 1 year, right? So what is he's saying? Like, I think in a way he's saying he has a very unique, strong willpower, you know, that he isn't just kind of a drone at the end of the day. And again, going back to the point where he moved the Marineford base beyond the red line, like he's someone that's like very motivated, and I think that's like highly contrasted with Okaji, who isn't as motivated, if you will, at least like in his disposition and personality, you know. While Akainu is very motivated, and I think when you have someone motivated, high ambitions for changing the world, even though we don't know exactly what that entails, it makes you think that he's not going to be the puppet of the world government till the end, in a way. Something's going to shift in him.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, so...
I don't think that he's going to go directly against them. It would be interesting at the end of the series, because I think we're of the same mind that Kobe is either going to become an admiral or he's going to just lead the Marines at the end of the series. But it would be interesting if Akainu did have some sort of change in his personality, based on whatever happens toward the end of the series, and somehow changes it that way. Although I think like either like Fujitora or Kobe would be a better candidate for that.
Yeah, I still think he'll be taken down by Luffy and everything. Sorry, one quick point I do want to add into the tension of the government and Akainu. We saw between Rob Lucci and him in the film Gold movie, where CP0 told Akainu to shut up and to comply with the order, you know, about getting the Navy ships, and that really set Akainu off, you know. So I know it's like not canon, but this really corresponds perfectly with the Dressrosa incident that I'm referencing, you know. It is, and I think when the Marines get more and more knowledge, I mean, and we can see after Egghead Island how things change when that, we kind of assume that information about who the Gorosei are in Emu might get out to the world. Like, we'll see how this changes the disposition of a lot of the Marines, you know, because even Doberman in this past arc was kind of comfortable with Saturn, you know, giving his orders with how they were going to deal with Egghead, you know, and Doberman's one of the most hardcore absolute justice guys out there, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, go.
No, you go ahead.
Oh yeah, and sorry, just look at the wiki real quick, going back on the Warlords of the Sea part. It says, even though the Warlords of the Sea were on the world government side, Sakazuki saw them as nothing more than pirates and believed they could not be trusted. Despite this, Sakazuki saw them as a necessary evil and wasn't happy that the Warlord system was abolished, but Admiral Fujitora believes the reason Sakazuki thinks this way is because Sakazuki has never personally suffered from the Warlords in the same way others have. So that's just kind of how the wiki describes it. But I think that's kind of like a similar to Garp, just like a different, you know, you just kind of work within the system, even though they have two different senses of justice, you know?
Yeah. It's basically any work environment. Everyone's going to be a little different.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, I still think it's, I don't know where he's going to end up at the end of the series, because I think just narratively, I don't think that he can be forgiven for killing Ace. Yeah, I'm still on the I know you're a big fan of the character, because you can read so much into his character like this, but I don't know, I still think that he's going to be a bad guy eventually at the end.
Oh no, yeah, and I agree too. I think it's more of a question of. I think part of the reason why I'm doing this video is if he has this really strong ambition and will that we've been talking about here, could that make him in a way where he supersedes Emu in a way? And I know Emu has really strong end of the series vibes, but if kind of Oda makes that comparison between him as a potential protagonist and an alternative thing, and he's like kind of the only villain to personally scar Luffy, you know, and to kill his brother and his family and stuff. And he's kind of like, we've seen him grow, right? We've seen him like from a vice admiral to an admiral to fleet admiral. He's having growth as well as a villain. You know, he's not kind of stationary. He's not stuck, you know? I'm not saying like he'd kill Emu or anything, but I don't know, like so many things could happen. Like, could the revolutionaries be more of the force that takes on the Gorosei and the world government, you know? And Akainu kind of like goes his own way with trying to take over, you know? Like, there's so many different ins and outs here, you know? I just don't really think the Marines being the puppets of the world government is, even with the absolute justice guys, that's like a guarantee as much as we think it's going to be.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how Egghead plays out, because we see, I mean, Saturn's basically exposing his true form of his devil fruit, and which is very demonic. But all the people who are allowed to see it, they seem okay with it. They're like, oh yeah, we're fine with having this literal like demon guy leading our being in charge of the world.
Yeah, and I think it would require more like knowledge of what their true intentions are, or like Emu actually being in charge of the world, kind of like a shaking in the faith a little bit, you know? Like, I think that would kind of have to be the thing too, because I think if Emu was, I'm almost positive Akainu doesn't know about Emu, and I think if he learned about Emu, I think it would really piss him off actually.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think Akainu is the on list of like the final tier villains. I think he's at my bottom. It's Akainu, Blackbeard, it's Akainu, the Gorosei, Blackbeard, and then Emu for me. But yeah.
Yeah, I think we're getting more of spotlight with him, and I think it is interesting. We still haven't really, I mean, like, we saw the brief thing of him fighting, taking down Kuma, you know? That was, like, kind of the only thing we've seen of him post-time skip, you know? We've seen way more out of Blackbeard and everything, you know? But I know a lot of people have kind of made the joke, Akainu's been bounded by the desk and he can't do it, and I think that's not just kind of a gag, but it's just more of, like, a narrative thing where Oda's saving him, you know? Because he's kind of like a bureaucrat right now, you know?
But we've seen that he wants to get out there.
Right, and I think there's like this dimension too where we're getting characterization on Kizaru, Sentomaru, Aokiji, and to an extent Akainu. And I think we're really going to start to see their characters fleshed out a lot more in the near future, you know? So, because we haven't really seen characterization out of them. And I think once we start knowing more about their flashbacks and why they're doing what they're doing, I think it will put his character more into a clearer light of where he's going to be at the end of the series, whether morally, in terms of final boss fights and all that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, literally Oda can take the character any way he wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's really good at undercutting expectations, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, hey, through Kuma's flashback that's coming out, we may see a lot of the admirals in this flashback coming up.
Yeah, because they're going to be pretty young. Oh, yeah, because this is even before, like, the Shiki flashback from episode 0. So, so yeah, it's going to be interesting.
For sure, for sure. And yeah, so any closing thoughts? I think that's basically where I'm at. Is like, I think there's a lot more to be discovered about Akainu's character. And I think kind of the sidelining because of the entrance of Emu may not be as permanent as people think. I think there may be a lot more growth for his character in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, even little things like this whole Kuma flashback thing, I don't think you need a lot to put a character into perspective, their past and their motivations. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so anyways, please like and subscribe if you have not. Leave your comments below. What do you think the role of Akainu is going to be in the future? If he's going to be whatever, say morally, is he going to be the final boss, or do you think he'll rebel against the Gorosei? Put your thoughts in the comment section below. But hopefully we'll get out a Jujutsu Kaisen review for the next couple episodes coming out. And then hopefully we have that One Piece chapter next week as planned. And yeah, and we will see you guys then. So have a good one. Peace.
See ya.